Here's why it's critical that Kash Patel and Tulsi Gabbard get through, and why the Democrats are so afraid of these two soon-to-be cabinet members. Let's start with Kash Patel. He knows what they've done. He knows what the deep state has been up to. He understands what the bad guys have been doing behind the scenes to try to use the Department of Justice and use the power of investigation and prosecution given to government authorities to undermine not just Trump, but to go after conservatives more broadly, to extremely aggressively prosecute and destroy J6 defendants, including nonviolent J6 defendants, to go after pro-life activists. It has been very clear that they're willing to also abuse the reputation of the FBI, the CIA, these kinds of places, in order to make more aggressive propaganda against Donald Trump and against those who support him. And so Kash was involved in the early days of uncovering the FISA abuses. Remember that? The Democrats used a tool that really exists in the U.S. surveillance arsenal to prevent terrorist attacks. They used it against Donald Trump. They entrapped General Flynn and used the Logan Act, which no American has ever been successfully prosecuted under that law in history, in 200 years. They used that as a pretext to set up an interview with General Flynn so that they could then claim that he lied and say that that was a federal crime. They destroyed the incoming national security advisor's reputation and kept him from keeping the job. It's a disgrace what they've done. And you need somebody who is going to go in there with the idea that there has to be a reckoning, that there has to be justice. And justice does not mean just move on. It doesn't mean, oh, we're going to forget about everything that has happened. It means giving each his due based on his or her actions and the abuse, in this case, of the power that they were given by the American people. And this is where I think Kash comes in and does important work for Trump and for the American people. Because if we have lawfare as a feature of American political life, we don't actually live in a free society. If anybody who wants to challenge the status quo, if anyone who wants to come forward and speak out against the powerful within the system can be prosecuted on garbage charges, which is exactly what happened to Trump multiple times over, then you are operating in a, we talk about the chilling of free speech. This would be like the chilling of politics, because you won't have people willing to come forward and take those kinds of risks. And if they do take those risks, they can still be defeated, not at the ballot box, but by the prosecutor's whim. And that is completely unacceptable. And it's really the end of America as a free society. I mean, that's not an exaggeration. So Kash going in there to completely tear apart the deep state, which does exist in this country to the degree that there are hyper-partisan activists within the federal bureaucracy and specifically within federal national security and law enforcement who think that they exist above the will of the American people as expressed through elections and elected officials, and that they can put their hand on the scale on issues and for candidates, and that ultimately they are the ones in control of the future and the destiny of this country. That is a deep state, and that exists in America. And it is time for that to be ripped out, stem and branch, or root and branch, whatever the phrase is. It needs to be done. It's absolutely critical. And Kash also, it's personal for him. He understands what it is to be targeted by some of these nefarious forces, and he knows how much they're willing to use the veneer of, oh, we're doing this for the right reasons, to use the pretense of, oh, this is justice, to pursue an agenda that is incredibly partisan and incredibly damaging. Next, we'll get into where Tulsi Gabbard is on this and why they are so panicked, I think, at the idea of her being at the DNI. But our sponsor here is Preborn. At Preborn clinics nationwide, pregnant mothers debating whether to bring their child into this world or not, or seek an abortion, are welcomed with open arms. And what preborn does is incredible. They're saving tiny babies' lives every day by doing this. They just say, hey, you have a pregnancy and you're troubled. You don't know what you're going to do. You don't know what decision to make. Come into a preborn clinic. They'll take care of you. They'll give you support and warmth and love. And they'll give you a free ultrasound so you can meet the tiny baby in your womb. As you can imagine, so many moms see that tiny baby on that free ultrasound. The whole thing is free. And they say, I'm going to give life to this tiny baby. But it's only possible because of you, the pro-life community. For just $28, you can help save the life of an unborn child. 100% of your donation goes to saving lives. To donate, dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby. That's pound 250, say the word baby, or go to preborn.com/buck. That's preborn.com/BUCK. Sponsored by Preborn. Now, Tulsi Gabbard. Why are they upset at Tulsi Gabbard? For one, she is a former Democrat. And you have to remember, for Democrats, this is all about power. This is all about their team being in charge. So they view it as an unforgivable crime against the party to be working for Donald Trump or to want to work for Donald Trump in this administration. That is the single thing that matters to them. Everything else is irrelevant, really, given that they view her as a traitor to the Democrats, to the left, and to their control of the country. Remember, she was running as a Democrat for president back in 2020. It has not been very long. And now Trump and MAGA have embraced her, and she is going to go into the Trump administration with the full backing of the Republican Party, essentially, in this role as director of national intelligence. But I just think the first part of this we all have to understand is that the Democrats absolutely hate anyone who leaves the fold, anyone who is no longer willing to play by their rules and play the game their way.
The American people elected Donald Trump as their president not once but twice, and yet the FBI and intelligence agencies were politicized by his opponents to undermine his presidency and falsely portray him as a puppet of Putin. Title I of FISA was used illegally to obtain a warrant to spy on Trump campaign advisor Carter Page, using a Clinton campaign-funded false dossier as their so-called evidence. Biden campaign advisor Tony Blinken was the impetus for the 51 former senior intelligence officials' letter dismissing Hunter Biden's laptop as disinformation specifically to help Biden win the election. Former DNI James Clapper lied to this committee in 2013, denying the existence of programs that facilitated the mass collection of millions of Americans' phone and internet records, yet was never held accountable. Under John Brennan's leadership, the CIA abused its power to spy on Congress, to dodge oversight, lied about doing it until he was caught, and yet has never been held responsible. Under Biden, the FBI abused its power for political reasons to try to surveil Catholics who attend traditional Latin Mass, labeling them as quote-unquote radical traditionalist Catholics. Personally, just 24 hours after I criticized Kamala Harris and her nomination, I was placed on a secret domestic terror watch list called Quiet Skies. Sadly, there are more examples. The bottom line is this must end.
So that's part one. And then in terms of the substance of this, to the degree that they're going to get into this, they at least have to make a show of it. Tulsi Gabbard is a bit of a maverick on some foreign policy issues. She is also anti-endless war. Somebody who served in the military for a long time has an understanding, I think, of what it is when the strategy does not take you to a place of finishing the job one way or the other, or closure, or whatever you want to call it. Victory. How about victory? No, she doesn't. She doesn't think it's okay the way that has gone on. And on the national security side, that means, I think, holding some of these agencies accountable for really poor forecasting and analysis, which I know about that because I was a CIA analyst. Yeah, we made mistakes. People make mistakes there, sure, but there should be some sense of, okay, why was this wrong, or why don't you have better information on this? And then also the usage of the intelligence community by the policy and the elected officials, by the policy community elected officials, to bolster their argument, like, oh, all the experts are on our side because the intelligence, and that's why she cited the 51 intelligence officers who came out and said it looked like Russian disinformation. They knew they were lying, by the way. that wasn't a mistake. They knew that it wasn't Russian disinformation, but they were willing to do that in that moment because the lie mattered then. A little bit like Obama right before this last election in 2024, he said that Trump said that there were very fine people on both sides in Charlottesville, essentially claiming that Trump was supportive of neo-Nazis. That is a lie. Donald Trump did not say that. The transcript shows what he was saying. It's very clear. But Obama knew if I lie about this now, it'll help. So I'll take the hit to my credibility and just keep going. And so that, my friends, is what exactly the same decision process that those 51 intelligence officers went through when they lied about Russian disinformation. I mean, that was absurd. The Russians filled a laptop full of stuff with Hunter Biden photos, doing all kinds of crazy law-breaking stuff. Everybody knew Hunter Biden was a degenerate. This wasn't some surprise. They knew, but they wanted to pretend, and they did. And unfortunately, 2020 ended up with Donald Trump not being president and Joe Biden becoming the president. So things like that. I mean, the politicization of intelligence can have enormous effects on the country. You think about Iraq WMD. I mean, there have been immensely damaging things that have come out of the world of the so-called intelligence community, and it's been very. I think there's been really no accountability for it. There's been no effort to understand why these things happen the way that they do. I also think Tulsi doesn't have some lifelong attachment to these agencies, and so would be, she hasn't come up through them and has lots of friends in them because they need to be a lot smaller. There are a lot of people that don't do very much at these places. I'll just tell you that's the truth. A lot of people, the morale is very low right now, whether it's CIA, DIA, NSA. I mean, think of all these. There's like 17 that technically comprise the intel community now. I think there were only 14 or 15 when I was in it. And it's out of control. So she's going to have to go in there and have some very real conversations with people about, what would you say you do here, which is another big part of it. And I think that she's going to shake up the status quo a little bit there. I also think she's going to have some challenges, big challenges, as somebody who doesn't really understand the culture or the system of intelligence as it is in America. So that's something she's going to have to learn very quickly on the job. I think she's capable of doing it. So that's the one area where I would say I have my concerns, but she'll pick it up pretty quickly. And if Brennan, that no talent loser, can be the CIA director, Tulsi or Clapper can be the DNI, better example, also a no talent loser, then Tulsi Gabbard I think will be a fantastic DNI. Sponsor is IFCJ. Monday of this week is known as International Holocaust Remembrance Day. We set aside this date annually to remember Holocaust victims and survivors. Today, the rise in global anti-Semitism and the constant attacks that Israelis have had to endure show us it's more important than ever to remember the atrocities of the Holocaust to ensure it never happens again. I've partnered with the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. They provide shelter, food, and safety to Jews in Israel and around the world, including those remaining Holocaust survivors. Give a gift today to show your support of the Jewish people by visiting supportifcj.org. That's supportifcj.org, or call 888-488-IFCJ. That's 888-488-IFCJ. That's the Buck Brief for Today team. Shields high.